It's showtime, and good evening. We are live. So, welcome, Christy, and welcome, Steve. We have, unfortunately, we lost Jocelyn over the last 24 hours with she's got a throat infection. So, this, I believe, is the first time, Steve, you and Christy have met. Is that right?
Yes.
So this, I believe, is the first time, Steve, you and Christy have met.
That's good. That's right. Yeah. You have to excuse me. I'm getting a terrible backlash here.
I was going to say it's not from my end.
Yeah, I'm getting the same thing. Might be time to put headphones on, Steve.
Not from my end. It's not from my end.
Yeah, I'm getting the same thing. Put headphones on, Steve. Yeah, I'm still getting it through the headphones as well. Let's see if it gets any better. Christy, give me a count. 1 to 3.
1, 2, 3.
That's perfect. Steve, give me 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Let's see if it gets any better. Christy, give me a count. 1 to 3. Okay, but I've still got the echo coming to myself. I think it might be fixed.
Yep, there's nothing clear. Yep, it's all clear at the moment. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. Well, phew, a little technical glitch there to get us started. Nothing like a bit of fun. So, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Yes, Steve, you have the best start time. What time is it there?
Oh, it's 3:15. Sorry, 4:15 in the afternoon. It's it's virtually just time for tea. So I'm going to knock off here, go and get myself some fish and chips down the road.
Okay. Right. And Christy, you're on 8:15 or 9:15?
9:15.
Okay, so somehow I got that wrong. Both of you have daylight saving. I thought it was 3:15 and 8:15. I'm sorry. We'll get that right next time. But here it's 11:17 now. And anyone who's in China, you should be getting yourself a hot chocolate or a Horlicks or something like that and settling down for the evening. So, what's in the news this week? Steve, you had a little thing that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, it's a little something that popped up in my bête noire, which is the Times. And once again, we've got this bee in a bonnet, and we just can't seem to get rid of it, which is about our friends, the Chinese, coming over to spy on us. Now, the Times article itself is one of the ones you'd expect from them, in that non-attributable, it's everything that is hinted at, but there's nothing actually behind it. The whole thing seems to come from the fact is that we've arranged visa rights for countries in the Pacific, Vanuatu, that kind of thing. And guess what? Surprise, surprise. People are using that as exact same rules to come to the country and visit. It's just something, it's an absolute nonsense story that seems to have been cocked up here by the MI5, as it says in the article, and also the National Crime Agency. They say they're worried about it being used for, crime groups to smuggle people into the UK, although I don't think that's the main route they're going to be doing it. But it's, when you read the article, it's just absolutely concocted.
What sort of people would want to be smuggled into the UK? What are they trying to hide if they can't come on a normal visa?
I don't think that anybody is going to be using this route, that's for sure. I mean, obviously we have the situation mainly on the south coast, where we have small boats coming over, bringing in people who want to claim refugee status or asylum. But
where are those people coming from?
It's from everywhere. A lot of them are coming in at this moment in time from Eastern Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, that kind of thing. But it seems to be an incredibly wide spectrum. These are the kind of people that are being preyed upon by the people smugglers. Yeah, I think a lot of them don't even realise why they're coming themselves. They end up funneled into the UK.
Are any of them Chinese?
Well, we have a very big Chinese community here in Manchester, as you're both probably aware, and just down the road in Liverpool. The people that we have coming in here are the Hong Kong people have come in on the passports, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Christy, did you see the news in America on the southern border? Apparently, you've got a wave of Chinese illegal immigrants coming in there. Do you know about that?
Well, I saw that post, and I really don't believe that a big wave is coming through. Maybe a few here and there, but not a big wave.
I actually did a little research on this. Steve, do you know the story?
Yes, it follows on from a while back. I think this story was trailed maybe about a month or two ago, and it was the people, thousands, quote in the article, wading through the jungle, to get in through the southern border. It didn't seem to make a lot of sense.
It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and I actually did research this and wrote an article about it for a publication in Australia. And the bottom line was there have been, and what they did was they said year to date, there have been 1,677 illegal Chinese people, Chinese nationals crossing the border, year to date. But they said FYTD, financial year to date. So I went online to look up when that was, and it was actually starting on the 1st of July last year to the middle of March this year. So we're talking about 8.5 months. We're not talking about 3.5 months. So that was one little aspect that was interesting. The second was they said there's been a 920% increase. Wow. I mean, as soon as you hear that, you think, my God, this is really bad. But think about this. There's 1,677. Now, I'm no mathematician, but that means last year there was about 2. So that's really what we're talking about. And then they didn't mention where they came from, how long they'd been anywhere else. My guess is that most of them would be Hong Kongers, because what happened in Hong Kong a couple of years ago, we had Hong Kong riots. Who supported those Hong Kong rioters? It was the Americans and the British. Where did they go when they were suddenly abandoned by the Americans and the British? Many of them went to the American embassy or the American consulate there, or the British embassy or consulate there. They went there knocking on the doors saying, hey, you said you were going to look after us. And they said, no, sorry, we can't. They closed the doors, and several of them were arrested outside of the embassy. This is a news story from a few months ago. Actually, a couple of years ago now. So those guys can't get refuge legally in America or in the UK. They are wanted criminals, rioters, protesters, whatever you want to call them, in Hong Kong. And so Taiwan won't take them. Taiwan has rejected them and sends them back. So they're completely lost now. They have to find some way of getting somewhere. So there may be some of them. And it may be, Steve, that these people are using your route, or your route if you're an American, to get into the UK. Or it may be some of them are coming across, but I very much doubt that Hong Kongers would come across as boat people on these small boats. They're more likely to use a paid people smuggler to get them across. So it could be possible that this is actually happening.
Well, for the Hong Kongers, I think I'm right in saying is that obviously they will hold still a British passport, the majority of them, or the right to a British passport.
No, they have to have been born before 1997 to have that. The BNO passport. So
we've offered an awful lot, but not many have been coming over comparatively to what was considered. I was looking at this earlier on, and I think before this, before the protest happened, I think it was only like 16,000 who had actually come to the UK before then, and we're not talking anything like that since the protests have happened.
No, nothing like it. It's quite small, and I've noticed quite a lot of them are unhappy there. I've seen blogs and vlogs of Hong Kongers who are quite unhappy.
It's not the land of milk and honey that they were expecting, that's for sure.
You mean there's no gold lining the streets?
Oh yeah, but we hide it from them. That's Manchester ones. We hide it under the potholes. But no, it's interesting. In a number of the smaller towns in Greater Manchester, which are quite close to us, such as Sale, they've been receiving funding from whichever sources, I'm not sure. Certainly the AntiChina groups of the Hong Kongers who have come over the NOs to set up, I don't know what you call them, community associations within shopping malls. So I've seen this in two of the different towns, which I found very surprising. They only short-lived, maybe lasted a month or two, but there was certainly a lot of support for them when they did come over, if they had a certain viewpoint.
Do you get this, Christy, where you have in shopping malls people who are anti-China setting up any stall of any sort or giving out leaflets?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything like that.
Australia does. Australia has quite a lot of them, and many of them are associated with Falun Gong. So it's very common, and maybe, Steve, that's where your funding is coming from. Falun Gong seem to be enormously well funded.
Yeah, but one of the things that we have is obviously Manchester, a very large student town, or student city, I should say. We have many Chinese students that come over.
Yeah,
and our academia here's left wing, obviously, but far more towards the Russian sphere of influence, and of course that leads back to the 40s and 50s, and there is still a rather negative view of China among academia here and among the student population. And very quickly, it seems to be that the Chinese students that come over tend to fall into two sides. It will be the ones that like the freedom of the West and fall for this pretty quickly, or the ones who retain a semblance of individuality and are not sucked in by this. And then, of course, they tend to be ostracized.
Yeah, I've got some very good friends. In fact, one was here for lunch on Sunday. We had a bit of a barbecue, and one of my former students, I've known her since she was 15 and she's over 30 now, was here for lunch. And she actually has a bachelor's and a master's from Manchester University. She had a wonderful time in Manchester, partying hard, no doubt. She says she worked hard. I remember going back about 7 or 8 years ago, I edited her dissertation for her as a favor. It was quite interesting, but she did work hard on that. Well, somebody did. If it wasn't her, somebody did. Yeah. What about Christy? Do you have any Chinese students where you are?
No, yeah, I'm kind of away from the universities, and the ones close by in Idaho, I don't see very much of Chinese students. But when I was going to the university, I did see Chinese students, and I actually made friends with one and had dinner with him once. His family, yes.
Yeah, I was. Let's move on from the Falun Gong stuff, because it's probably not what we started on. But I think that is possibly the funding source of your anti-China. Certainly in Australia it is, and I've seen it in the UK, but usually near the embassies, where they have kind of a permanent base set up outside the embassies or consulates. And you probably find in Manchester you've got a permanent base up there as well. Christy, I've lost your photograph. I'm sorry. I can't find the thing that you were going to talk about today, and I can't bring the photograph in. So I'm going to just have to say, what was it you wanted to talk about tonight?
It was the FBI sending people into Catholic churches, calling them potential terrorists. So that was the article.
Do you think Catholics are potential terrorists?
No, definitely not. And
why do the FBI think they are?
I don't know why they're targeting Catholics, because, to me, they would be targeting all Christians if that's the case. Because I think, what I understood was that they assume that most Christians, Catholics are conservative Republicans, perhaps. And from what I understand, the FBI is working or listening to liberals. I'm not quite sure. You had something about that, how they're going on the left side and kind of.
Yeah, I recently did an article and a video called, no, maybe I didn't do the video. I wrote an article called "Are Domestic Extremists Investigating Domestic Terrorists?"
Yes, you did do a video of it. Yeah,
yeah, you did.
Did I do a video? I can't remember.
I think you did. Yes.
Yeah, and thank you for watching and reminding me of what I do. Knowing what you know, if you watched that video, was anything in there a surprise to you?
Well, if it was a surprise that the FBI has decided to go political, yes, I thought they were supposed to be neutral, not political.
Well, according to, and I forget his name now, the senator who is a Republican senator, Jim something, he's in charge of the intelligence or one of the judicial affairs. Jim Jordan, thank you. Thank you. He's in charge of the Judicial Affairs Committee. He believes that there is a very, very targeted campaign against Trump supporters who are generally, of course, quite right-wing. And one of the comments in the article was they have a lot of guns. It was school parents of
yes.
kids in school. And they're getting... I think we've got to put this into a perspective first. There are two theories being taught in some American schools that the conservatives don't like. One of them is critical race theory, and the other one is gender, the wokeism. There are two aspects of this. Now, I asked a couple of Chinese people, what would happen if your teacher came to school if your male teacher came to school wearing a dress and high heels, and they just left? What do you mean? What do you talk? I said, well, what would happen? Well, he'd get sacked immediately. So, well, what would happen if your teacher came to school and started talking to you? These are teenage kids, started talking to you about her lesbian girlfriend, her lesbian partner. Well, it wouldn't happen. They just wouldn't do it. And the Chinese are quite traditional about this sort of thing. And if one of them did, and I explained this, if a teacher arrives in school in some parts of the United States. Now, tell me if I'm right or wrong here, Christy. If a teacher arrives in a school and is dressed inappropriately, so I would say inappropriately, if a man is dressed as a woman and goes to school to teach the kids, what would happen to that teacher in schools near you?
They'd be fired because
they would.
Yeah, there's a lot of conservatives around where I live, so. Okay. They would definitely probably be fired.
What about in Los Angeles, New York, other parts of California?
California, probably Oregon, California, they'd probably be fine with it because that's what they're very liberal over there, and they probably would be more fine with it than they would be here. So
okay, so if in California that teacher, so let's say a teacher comes to one of your local schools, one of your kids' schools, dressed like this. You as parents are quite conservative, quite reasonable, and say, no, that's not acceptable. And the school fires that teacher. Does that teacher now have recourse under law for an unfair dismissal?
They might. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the laws are in Wyoming about that kind of stuff, but they might actually have, depending.
In some parts of America, certainly they do. Mm-hmm. And that teacher could not be punished and, in fact, would be encouraged. And what do you think about the idea of having transgender shows for teenagers in school?
In school, no. I don't think it's appropriate to have that kind
What about in school after hours? Not part of the curriculum, but after hours school activities.
I don't think that should be at school at all. I mean, if parents want to take their children to something like that outside of school, it's up to them. But I don't think school should be part of that.
Well, Steve, you're nodding your head there. You agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's just put to mind a news report just at the beginning of the month where actually one of our largest teaching unions, the National Education Union, the NEU, voted to actually increase the number of drag and LGBT events within school time. As I say, outside of school time, I don't have an issue with that. And certainly there are certain issues with regard to it that need to be taught in schools these days. But I feel these type of events go more towards less for a curriculum take, more of a promotional take, maybe.
What and the reason Shady Hazard just came up with this comment. This is an a strange topic. Sorry, it's Lawai, not Shady has a Lawai. It's a strange topic, and I agree it's a strange topic. But there's a reason why we're talking about it. It's because you mentioned this Christian extremism thing. What's actually happened inside of some parts of America, according to Jim Jordan, is that teachers are complaining about this. They're being told, you suck it up because this is the way of the future. And some of these parents are very conservative people, and mostly they are Trump supporters, and many of them do have a lot of guns. So what happens is that these parent-teacher meetings escalate into violence. And if violence escalates and someone has a lot of guns, then they have a domestic violent extremism problem. And that's the basis of the report. The FBI are trying to prevent that kind of thing happening. And that's the basis of that. But what we found out was the Oath Keepers, the 3%ers, and the Proud Boys. These are really extremist groups. I mean, they may argue that they're not extremists, but if you're a middle-of-the-road person, those three groups are extremists. They were all present at the January the 6th event. And several of them, all of those groups have somebody who's been convicted of some kind of seditious-related offense. Two of those groups are actually registered charities. That was amazing to me. So I don't know if they can write off their guns on their tax returns, but they are registered charities. The Proud Boys are not. The Oath Keepers and the 3%ers are both registered charities. But the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys and the 3%ers are both, in some places, registered as terrorist organizations as well. So New Zealand and Canada have registered one or both of these as a terrorist organization. So we have terrorist organizations acting as patriots. And then they found, when somebody leaked the Oath Keepers registration list, that more than 300 of its members were there was some part of the Homeland Security. And that was the basis of my report. There was some aspects of FBI, border control, and a few other organizations that are there to keep the peace and to secure the country, who are members of these groups, whose clear goal on the 6th of January was not to keep the peace and defend the country. They were defending what they thought of as their rights under the Constitution. So
it's something that is actually growing, and especially over the last 6 or so months in the UK, what we're now having what are described as far left and far right groups turning up outside of things like the drag events, which are becoming more and more common, and just laying into each other. We've got groups in the UK such as Turning Point UK, as it's called, and some other parties, that kind of thing, that are, as I say, seem to be growing in influence. And whether it's these kind of events at schools, or even there was 2 weeks ago, there was a group turned up at an empty pub because there was just a rumor on the internet that there was going to be a drag event. Nothing happening, but they turned up, protesters turned up, anti-protesters turned up, and suddenly there's fight, and then police vehicles on fire, that kind of thing. So it's escalating here in the UK. Thankfully, we don't have the guns.
So it's turned from being online hate to real hate, and this is one of the points that Jim Jordan is making. The FBI are actually targeting people online, particularly for this. And I think that's where your story stems from, your story about it's strange to me that it's Catholics, not Christians.
Yeah, me too.
It's extreme religious. And let's be honest, all religions have some kind of fundamentalism or extremism that can be dangerous. But 99.99% of most religious people are not that way inclined at all. But it does seem to be a particular problem in America. And from what Steve's saying there, you think it's becoming a problem there too?
Yes. The more it becomes prominent, then obviously the more people will take notice of it. And those ones who are either have as they see it, a legitimate problem with it, and I don't think the majority have a legitimate problem with it. I think they're just looking for a rumble. They're just looking for any kind of aggravation. I think the right wing protesters seem to be far more violent in these things. And from what I read in news reports anyway, the left wing protesters that go along seem to be far more protective. So it's always been a problem with us. There's always been a lurking right wing within the United Kingdom.
I remember the riots that we had in places like Brixton in the 1980s. A little before that, it was Lewisham, Brick Lane, National Front riots down there, and then the West Indians going a little crazy in Notting Hill and Brixton, and then of course there was Toxteth up in. I can't remember. Is that Manchester or Liverpool? Toxteth. I can't remember. I went there, but it was. Christy, you're too young to remember all.
Yeah,
of this.
I was like, I don't remember.
Yeah. Steve and I were there. We lived through the history of it. In my case, I was actually there on the front lines. And these Brixton riots are very, very well known in British history. And it was one of my claims to fame that I was involved there for 10 nights in a row in 1981, March or April 1981. And it really was quite nasty. And the same problems. This is the thing. The same problems that existed then are still there now.
Oh.
Would
you agree, Steve?
Absolutely. It's always amazed me since I've moved to Manchester. I've been here 10 years now. That for a relatively rich city, and I mean, when I say rich city, I mean in terms of potential infrastructure, that kind of thing, that the governmental authorities locally have made virtually nothing of it. We do have a case of that, we don't have the investment, we don't put money into the country like we should be doing. But what happens is, I don't think even the local councils, and we have so many tiers of them, right way up to metropolitan mayors these days, they're not making the best use of what they got.
Maybe they're not. This is a good comment from Hantois. To be eligible for charity, you must include promoting health, sports, and shooting. They can all be deemed sports. So yeah, shooting is deemed a sport.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. So that might be why they can claim a charitable status, because they're involved in sports. So do you think is it going to get better or going to get worse, Christy?
I think it's going to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Why do you think that?
It just feels like, it just keeps on getting, I don't know, it just feels like it's getting worse and worse with the clashes of the conservatives and liberals. And I don't know. It's hard to explain. I think next year is going to be even worse when, we've seen what's happened to Trump, and there's many people that don't like Biden, but I don't know. It seems like next year is just going to be worse when it comes to
is Trump coming back?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything in the news yet. I think he's trying to, and a lot of people around me are gonna, if he does, and everything is settled, and he's found innocent, I guess, then a lot of people around here are gonna vote for him. But then the liberals are really after anybody, it seems like, conservative. So it just seems like there's a fight between states even. There was a senator that not too long ago, she didn't outright say it, but was calling for a civil war. She didn't. Do you remember that? Because I did post something about that, where she just, said that we just need to separate the states, the liberals and the conservative states.
Was that Marjorie Taylor Greene?
I can't remember. I don't have.
I think it's MTG. She does it. I think she actually has called for a separation of the state. I don't think she was calling for a civil war.
Yeah, that's what some people felt like she was doing. She didn't outright say it, but yeah, she got punished for that. But
well, how do you separate the states?
I know exactly. That was my point. And then what if you're neither conservative or liberal? Then what happens to you then? So
it tried it once before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you think it's? I mean, there are schools of thought that say it would be a good thing if America became not the United States of America, a USA, USB, and maybe a USC. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't like it at all. I mean, what about the people that are, just want to live their lives and you don't want to, are neither liberal
you mean
or
like about 90% of the normal people?
Yeah, I mean, what you can't go into another state and vote, which that some people have actually tried to do that, where if you move to a state that they're trying to get laws where you can't vote for like a certain amount of time because you might be conservative or liberal or something, and they're even trying to do that, take away the voting rights if you're a different party. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it hasn't. I think it might have been. I'm not sure what state. I thought it was Florida, but I could be wrong.
What would happen, do you think, if there was a movement inside of America to separate some part of America? What would happen if China said, we support that movement? Or if China said, well, we're going to sell you weapons, or we're going to send some of our senior people from the military to come and train you and help you to prepare for this? What do you think would happen?
Oh, that would be terrible. Yeah, exactly. That would not be good.
Taiwan?
Exactly, yeah.
This is exactly the situation.
Exactly.
Now, people would say, but Taiwan is different. Taiwan is different. It's not. Taiwan is an inalienable part of China. Now, you can argue about the politics. The Taiwanese people say they're an inalienable part of China. The Chinese people say Taiwan is an inalienable part of China. You can argue the politics about it and who's democratic and who's not. That can be argued. But the fact is, it's not America's business.
No, it's not.
And it's not Canada's. It's certainly not the UK's business. And China said, we lost Hong Kong before. Now, China never lost Macau. This is an interesting thing because Macau was actually rented to the Portuguese for a long period of time. But they lost Hong Kong because it was taken from them. They lost part of Wuhan, part of Qingdao, part of Chongqing. There's basically 46 different places inside of China that didn't belong to China for a period of time between about the 1860s and the 1940s. Really, Shanghai was right up to the 1940s. It's part of it still existed as Britain. Part of it was France. Part of it was Germany. And these are facts. This is why China is so adamant. It's not going to let Taiwan go. It's not going to let anything go. What they do want is the whole thing to be peaceful. But this is what would happen in Scotland if China did that? Do you think?
I was just thinking.
You're thinking that.
They've got a call if they're interested in that kind of thing. Frankly, the Scottish would tell them where to go.
Yeah, probably right too. But, unless they can play football better than them.
And obviously, we would take a stand on that. But no, it's not even the sort of thing that can happen. As I say, the Scottish people would turn back on it straight away. But there's no way that the Chinese people would be doing this. I mean, we get the grief all the time. It's Nicola Sturgeon had a bee in a bonnet about so-called, Chinese police bases and all that kind of rubbish beforehand. No, they're not going to be doing this. They are a non-interventionist country.
Steve, is there one of those police stations in Manchester that you're aware of?
Well, yes, apparently every one of the little shops that we go to that has the visa registration service or something like that. Obviously we've got a proper visa centre, but there's loads of little businesses that pop up to do that kind of thing. Apparently these are all them, because apparently somebody once went to a Chinese Communist Party event once, or went to a dinner with somebody.
I've been to Communist Party events that probably there goes my passport. many of them.
It's such a ridiculous, as we saw with this ridiculous overreaction to the incident at the Chinese consulate in Manchester. If we're talking about hordes of secret Chinese police everywhere, they would have been there to take it down. Not a couple of blokes walking from outside of the embassy, outside the consulate to do this.
It was rather amateurish, wasn't it?
it's any stick they can find to beat the Chinese at the moment. It's pure xenophobia is what we're seeing, and it's getting, I'm afraid, worse and worse. But no, it's ridiculous nonsense. It really is.
Good. I'm glad you think it's ridiculous nonsense. I do too.
I
I was
really
hoping there would be an identified police office, and I was going to give you the challenge to pop down there and take some photos and have a chat with the guys in there and see what they do. I've
actually been there to ask to see if I see if there was one there. But strangely enough, 50 yards from where I'm sitting now, there is a Tibetan restaurant, a lovely place, lovely people, but they'll swear blind. They're blind that there's police, surveilling them and doing all this kind of thing. And
is there any evidence that they are?
Nothing that I have seen, but I haven't staked the place out to find it or anything like that. No.
Yeah, I think you ought to get out in your car, an unmarked car, and just check it out for us. Report back next month. Do you have any Tibetans where you are, Christy? Any idea?
No, as I said, I'm pretty out in the middle of nowhere, so there's Jackson. Yeah, well, I mean, there might be a few tourists that come through that perhaps are Tibetan. I haven't really met anybody, so.
I've just been looking at there was a Tibetan, the Tibetan Action Group produced a report about a year ago about what they called the colonial boarding schools. Now, in terms of atrocity propaganda, this is it. They brought it out 6 months after the Canadian government announced that they had found bodies in colonial boarding schools of Native Americans who had been basically neglected to death. That's the way it seems. I mean, this is a horrendous history that America, the US, Australia, they're all facing this kind of. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's a horrible history. What the Tibetan Action Group have done is they've capitalized on this horror story and created a story of Tibetan schools doing the same kind of thing, erasing Tibetan culture and stuff like that. And I've just spent half of today working on something about that, an article that someone's asked me to write. But it's really interesting, the Tibetan story. And I see there's some comments going on about Tibet. Perhaps we should move off that rather sensitive topic. What else were we going to talk about? I was going to bring up something that about. Let me see if I can get this picture up. I'm struggling with the format here of how I'm working on this, and no, I can't get the picture up. I'll just cancel that. I found a story today that said the water in a town in Australia called Walgett. No one's ever heard of Walgett. It's a tiny town with a population of about 40,000 people. But the water in this town is unfit to drink. And the moment I saw this, I thought about you, Christy. The water is unfit to drink. Not because your water is unfit to drink, but you would have heard of the Flint, Michigan story, right?
Yes,
Can you
definitely.
tell us what's happened in Flint?
Oh, let's see. I'm trying to remember it. I think I don't remember what chemical was in their water, but I don't think that they've really resolved it yet. And then there was also, was it a place in Mississippi, which they also had problems with drinking water. I'm thinking, I probably should research that. I can't remember now which one. Why don't I pull that up real quick and see if I can find. Let's see. I think it was.
Was it the lead levels in Flint? Was it?
Was it lead? I think so.
According to Shady Hazard's lead in the water at Flint, yeah. Shady Hazard's usually pretty good at this stuff. Lead in the water. Thanks.
Yeah, Jackson, Mississippi is where it was, and I think they're still dealing with the water crisis there.
Don't you live in Jackson too?
No, Jackson, Mississippi.
Different Jackson.
Different Jackson, yeah. So.
But the same name.
Yeah, same. Yeah, there's a few cities in the U.S. that named Jackson.
Are they all named after the same person, or did there just happen to be a lot
maybe,
of Jacksons?
Yeah, maybe. I think so.
All right. Okay. Interesting. And how long has this been going on? I think that's a line from a song. I can kind of hear it in my head now.
I'm not going to sing it.
You thought the same thing, didn't you?
How long has this
been going on? Yeah.
See if I can find.
Not really showing our age now, isn't it?
We're going to get the karaoke machine
out
next.
It says August 2022. I'm looking at Wikipedia right now. So yeah.
Yeah,
so that's
PBS, Public Broadcasting Service. Yeah. So August 2022, that's 6 months, and they haven't fixed it. The situation with Walgett is slightly different. It's because the town has never had, whoops, sorry, that was an accident to put that on, but this is Hang Tuah. I put the other one on from Hang Tuah a little while ago because it was the 80s that the miners' strike happened, not the 70s. And I've never seen you make a mistake. The Tibetans are the only ethnic group. Not true, because if you are a Han Chinese and you live in Tibet, you are also taught Tibetan, English, and Mandarin. But technically, that is correct. Where was I going? Yeah, the problem with Walgett in New South Wales is that it's such a small town that the government have never put water to it. It's had dam water and it's had underground artesian water. And what's happened now, because of the climate issues in Australia, there's not a lot of spare water around. And the water that is deep down underneath the artesian basin underneath Australia is now salinated water. It's too salty to drink. So they can't drink it. And what happens in America and what would happen in England, Steve? Let's go to England first. What would happen in England if you had a town that had an issue and no drinking water was available? What would happen?
Well, over here, we've had similar things previously through mistakes in the water supply companies. We had a very big one down in the southwest where they put too much, I think it was aluminium in the water, and it was slowly poisoning people for whatever. We're in a different situation here in that obviously our water supply infrastructure is far better developed than smaller places like in New South Wales. But we would have a complete disaster very quickly. It was not so long ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where contaminated water supplies in the northwest, I'm forgetting the actual place, meant that hundreds of thousands of people had to be supplied daily with bottled water. So
who paid for the bottled water?
Oh, it all comes out for the councils end up paying it for the end. I think they may get a little bit back from the government, but then very few people do. There's very little in the way of emergency preparedness left over here anymore.
Oh wow!
But yeah, it was as I say, just huge pallets of bottled water dropped off at corners, and then people hopefully getting on it. But that went on for a period of weeks. So yeah, we've had it, not to this extent where it's in the groundwater, but we're on such a narrow knife edge with our infrastructure that even one of our reservoirs in the hills around us, if one of them was to fail for any reason, the old Victorian piping, etc., to go, we would have serious problems. We would have very serious problems very quickly, and not just our social infrastructure would fail, but also our law and order would go very quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting how fast things can collapse. In America, Christy, what do you think would happen? Let's say, for example, I mean, Steve's talking about you've got great water infrastructure, which is generally correct in most places. Australia has in most places. But if you had a failure of some sort and for a period of time you had no water available to you, would your government supply it?
Probably for a limited amount of time they would, but I don't think for a long period of time. Hopefully they'll try to fix the problem, but in some cases, it's the state that is required to fix the problem, not the federal government. So it kind of gets kind of tricky when that happens. But I'm thinking that they have had disasters, and they've had, help to a certain, amount of extent. And then after that, people have to take the bill from there. So
yeah, I'll tell you what really attracted me to this story today was one line, and if in fact it was a subheadline: water is more expensive than Coca-Cola. And I thought, wow, what's happened there is that some corporation is either some shipping company or some water company or some bottling company has decided to capitalize on this. The people who live there are being rorted. That's a great Australian word. It's a graft, it's a grift. They're being ripped off by the system. Some people are selling water way over the price. Now, obviously, you have to ship your water to a certain place. There's a price associated with, but this should never ever be more than a bottle of Coca-Cola. That's the issue. What would happen to a company in America that did that to the people?
Wow, I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Well, I would think there'd be a public outcry, would hope. And
you'd hope so.
Yeah, I hope that, they would eventually, because I wouldn't stand for it myself.
Steve, what would happen in the UK if a company did that?
It would depend on who picked up the baton with it and started running, who actually started complaining about it. I think what would happen, majority of it, there'd be about a week or two of aggravation, but people's attention would quickly move elsewhere.
Yeah.
And in the end, nothing would happen. The government or the local council would say there's going to be an inquiry about it, which would happen 2 or 3 years down the line, and then somebody would say, "Oh yes, we'll learn the lessons from that. Thank you very much." And
lessons learned. Move along. Nothing to see here. In China, almost certainly. I know this for a fact. Actually, it has happened during the early days of the pandemic, when people profiteered off the pandemic. They were literally closed down. They were fined millions of RMB. A company that was selling face masks at the beginning of the pandemic for 300 RMB a box instead of 30 RMB a box got fined some enormous amount and basically went out of business. A hotel that was charging people who came from Hubei 10 times the price of anybody coming from anywhere else in China. When Hubei was not locked down in the early days, there was a fear, a stigma. And then that hotel, this is in my own town in Zhongshan, that hotel was closed down. Literally, the owner was punished. I don't know if he was jailed or fined, but definitely the hotel is now closed because they did that. Well, moving on, I've got a question here from a friend of mine. Yao Shu is a friend of mine in Beijing. It's a question for Steve and Christy, not me, because she knows I know the answer. How much? Let's go America. No, let's go Steve first. Let's go England first. How much knowledge do you have of China's Xinjiang and Tibet? Do you even know where these are? I'm sure, Steve, you do. Christy, I know you do.
Yeah, we certainly do. However, I would say not until I became interested in China. Beforehand, I wouldn't have a clue. The only thing I'd know about Tibet was Mount Everest, Himalayas.
And some people say it's not even in Tibet.
The problem is, over here, nobody knows. Really, people would not be able to point to areas of the United Kingdom, and I mean regions of the United Kingdom on a map, let alone elsewhere.
Really?
You see these embarrassing videos about, can you name where, like Oxford or Cambridge is, famous places in the United Kingdom, and they wouldn't be able to do that. So no, they will have heard of Uyghurs, because that has a protest movement behind it, as with Tibet. But finding on a map, I'm afraid the vast majority of our people, no, wouldn't got a clue. I talked to our neighbours about it. I mean, they're hearing about it. Wouldn't have a clue.
Really?
They could
Christy, what about Americans, do you think?
Same, very much.
Really?
Like what Steve said. Yes, they would.
Wow.
I mean, hopefully they would even know where China was. That's a start.
I saw someone recently pointing to Hainan Island and thought it was Taiwan, and they made the comment, no wonder it has all these. It's an American. No wonder it has all these problems because it's so close to Vietnam. Well, Hainan Island is close to Vietnam, and it's interesting, really, because Hainan it's actually closer to Vietnam than it is to me. It's just off the coast of Vietnam, but it's also off the coast of southern China. So there's never been any dispute about Hainan Island. It is a Chinese island, but I can understand why somebody would look at that and make that mistake. But I can't understand why people are so passionate about places that they pretty much, as you say, Steve. A few years ago, you never heard of it. And Christy, the same with you, I guess. You came online a year or 18 months ago, starting to say, what's the situation here? This is not right.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that I obviously knew where China and Taiwan. I knew where Tibet was, but when it came to Xinjiang, I had no clue until I got online and finally realized what was going on over there. So.
Yeah, I don't think people realize also that how big these places are. I do. I've cycled across one of them. I know how big it is, but the Tibet is the size of more than 4 Germanys. Just the Tibetan region is more than 4 Germanys. So that's pretty big.
But I used to think Germany was pretty big when I was stationed there.
Well, Germany is pretty big. Yeah.
When you're on a little island like ours, it's just like, oh, okay. But one of the things, that, just going back quickly to how much of an idea people have about, say, Xinjiang or Tibet, over here in the United Kingdom, it seems to be mainly about the big name celebrities that have got on board with it. You might do the Instagram post or the Twitter post about it, and it's the name Xinjiang, Tibet. It's just it's a cipher. They've really got no idea about it, where it is, the people, or anything. It's something that they've been, in effect, told to be worried about. So they're worried about it.
It's not even called Tibet in China, which is interesting too. It's called Xinjiang. It's West Jiang. I'm not sure what the Jiang means. It's not the Jiang of a river. It's a different one. But yeah, it's an interesting name. In the Spratlians. Oh yeah, there's. Someone's making the comment that where are we? I lost it now. It's just these comments come and go so quickly. The Spratly Islands are contested by both China and Vietnam, and yes, they are. But at the same time, they're contested without needing any outside interference or influence. And basically, China and Vietnam will get along. They'll work it out. And the same thing with the Philippines. And what I find interesting about these islands is that the island of Taiwan also lays claim to the same, in fact, more islands than the Chinese mainland does. So that's a very interesting thing. I wonder if, this is really a very, very highly hypothetical question. If Taiwan was ever independent, what would America say about the islands? How many islands would be part of Taiwan? That would be a really interesting question. So somebody says you should watch Mark Vine's vlogs. Is that about Taiwan or is that about Tibet? Don't know. I can hear Steve's
so
calling a friend.
The name rang a bell, but it's not the person I thought it was. There's a Mark Vine who's a chef. Oh yeah, Mark Vine's Travel for Food. Yes, that is it. Yeah, I think
it is. Okay.
Yeah. Popular Taiwanese food, 40 plots at a time.
And then Xinjiang is the largest province in China. Wow, this is twice tonight. I'm going to correct you, Hang Tua. It's not a province. It's a region. It's the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. So technically not a province, but yes, it is the largest in China. I think there's there's several of them. Ningxia is a Hui autonomous region. Guangxi is the Guangxi Zhuang autonomous region, and there's lots and lots of smaller autonomous regions throughout China. Yes, he's a food vlogger. Someone is going to correct me and say there's another one. I'm sure there is, but I can't remember it right now. So, what else were we going to talk about? We're coming towards the top of the hour. This is interesting. I didn't know about this. A declaration of conduct of the parties in the South China Sea. The West keeps stirring trouble. Can we define who the West is? Christie's laughing at this one. Who is the West?
I keep getting told off for this on Twitter. Can't say the West.
Yeah. And yeah, I've got validation from my Chinese expert. Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region is not a province. So Yawen, Yawen has her name back to front. She's actually Shu Yawen. Wow. Is there another autonomous region that I've forgotten? I've got Guangxi. Tibet, of course, Tibet. So Tibet, Guangxi, Xinjiang, and Ningxia. I think there's 4 of them. Yawen, please correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. The water in Walgett is only a few cents more expensive than Coca-Cola. Can I ask somebody to tell me how much does a Coca-Cola cost in the UK? Because this is 1 RMB. That's 15. No, that's not even 15 cents. That's about 4.5 cents in Australian money. In US money, there are 7 RMB to $1, so that's about 15. In the UK, this is about 8p. What's it cost for a bottle of water?
In the UK, a bottle of water.
Sorry, yeah, Coca-Cola and water. Sorry.
In the UK, I can go to a particular supermarket, which is called one of the discounters, and I'll pay maybe 15 pence for a 2-litre bottle of water. Coca-Cola would be the actual brand name Coca-Cola is going to be about £2 to £2.25 for 2 litres. However,
£2.25.
Yeah, smaller bottles of Coca-Cola, they tend to be about 120 to 150. That's like a 500 ml.
Right.
But
so what does a bottle of water cost?
A small bottle of water, you can get them for like 15p, lower quality in the discounter shops like Aldi and stuff like that. But if you go to the same place where you'll buy a Coca-Cola from, then it would be almost the same price as a Coca-Cola, and in some cases more expensive. You can go buy big brand names of water, smart water that is supposed to improve your cognitive ability and all this kind of stuff, and you'll pay a couple of quid for that.
Yeah, of course, the San Pellegrinos and the Evians would be more expensive. Christy, what's the difference between water and Coke? Are you checking it? You're going online.
Well, I know that depending on where you get it, could be over to $2, depending on if you get it out of a vending machine or from a retailer. It just depends on. I'm trying to see what it is at Walmart, but I can't pull it up quickly. But yeah, so water, I think, depending on the brand of water, is still a little cheaper than Coke, but getting very close to.
I've never seen anywhere in my life that water was more expensive than Coca-Cola. Maybe Saudi Arabia or somewhere like that. It could be. I don't know.
Yeah, here it just depends on where you buy it.
Yeah,
some people,
But I mean, there's obviously differences in quality of water, and there's differences in the way the water is processed. One of the most popular waters here to buy is distilled waters, Watson's water, very, very commonly bought here, rather than the filtered water. But people who buy Watson's water know they're paying a little bit more for it than the filtered. I'm not sure what this one is, but this is a special one that my wife gets. It's called the Tiny Molecular Water Secret. So it actually has TMWS on it, the Tiny Molecular Water Secret.
I've always admired that the Chinese have got such lovely names for products.
Yeah, I know.
My wife Helen bought a I forget what it was. I think it's some perfume or something over there, and it was called "Embrace the Dainty Cyclone."
I wonder what it came. There's probably, and if we look at that, we look at the Chinese for it. There's probably some very. It's probably quite
Very
accurate, but the Chinese language is much more developed than ours, and this is a fact. Chinese language does actually have 5,000 years of written history. The English language has about 1,300 years, or even less, and it was King Alfred the Great, who's famous for burning the cakes, but is actually the person who created the English language as it is. Not as it is now, it's developed considerably. But yeah, he was the guy. He's great because of that, not because he burned cakes. And we found out that there are 5 autonomous regions. The interesting one is Inner Mongolia, the Inner Mongolian Autonomous Region. I guess it's Mongolian is the major ethnicity there. I've been to Inner Mongolia too, but I haven't been to Mongolia. So where are we going? Did we have any other topics that we wanted to talk about? Oh, I did. The school shootings. How is it over there, Christy? Are your kids okay?
Recently, I don't know if you saw, I posted on Twitter that I can't remember what day it was, but they sent me a notification from my kid's school that there was a possible school shooting there, and they would keep us up to date. I mean, that scared me. Was
this a false alarm?
It was a prank, actually. It turned out to be a prank, but I got I got like more than one notification. They kind of, and then finally they said it happened to many schools in the state. The same person called all these schools and told them that there was a possible shooting with possible victims. Mm-hmm. But when I got that first text, I was terrified.
What did you do when that happens?
I mean, I just sat there and like, oh my gosh, because you just don't know what to do because they're notifying you. But then they they said that then they give you another text a few minutes later saying you're everything is okay, almost okay. We've pinned it down to a false alarm. So
could they not have waited until they pinned it down before alerting you?
Yes. that was very terrifying because I mean, what am I supposed to do? I was going to get in the car and go over to the school, but that I don't know. When I got the second text, I calmed down and say, oh, okay, it was a false alarm. Things are fine. And then they they sent another text after that saying more information about what happened and stuff. So yeah. But I mean, it's possible. I mean, there's guns everywhere, people, mental illness issues. I mean, my kids are not safe. I know that.
Do you get this feeling that when you're sending the kids to school that this could be the day that it happens?
I mean, well, now, I mean, before I got this text and this incident, I thought, it was in my mind, but not,
we all think it won't happen to us.
Exactly.
Everybody lives our life that we're not going to have that car accident. We're not going to die of that.
Yeah, it's like it's going to be somebody else's school somewhere else. But then when this happened, it's like a wake up call. Like it could definitely happen in my kid's school. So I send my kids to school, and I just hope that they've prepared. I mean, have that my kids will, be safe if it does happen. I don't know if they have drills. They text me and tell me that they have school shooting drills today or something. And, just to notify us to talk to our kids when they get home or before they go or whatever, that they're having
how do your kids feel about this? Is it all part of the fun of going to school, or is it more serious?
I don't know if they even realize what the danger is. I don't think they really realize what's happening. So.
So is it duck and cover drills?
Pretty much,
Steve, do you have anything like this in the UK? I know you're not at school or anything.
No, thankfully, since Dunblane, back in the mid mid-90s. I think that was the last major shooting at school. We had a complete change of the gun laws ever since then.
Yeah,
it's less shootings at the moment. It's knife crime, stabbing with teenagers. That's the real issue that we've got.
Do you know anyone who owns a gun?
Yes, I do actually. My stepson is a gun enthusiast, and he regularly goes out shooting.
Okay.
He has his cabinet full of long guns and handguns, that kind of thing. But
he doesn't keep them at home, though, does he?
No, they have to keep them at an actual gun club. Yeah. I think
that was the same when I was there too.
A short period of time, maybe in transit, that kind of thing.
But in transit, doesn't he have to have a box bolted into the boot of his car, padlocked, and the ammunition separated and different padlock?
And he's got to let everybody, I think, let the police know when he's traveling. Although that's obviously that's bullet weapons, smoothbores such as shotguns. They're still a lot more lax rulings and everything over here. But
Christy, do you know anyone who has a gun?
Oh yes, my mother.
Your mother has a gun.
Oh, she has a few guns. Yes.
I think we covered this last time. Actually, we talked about it. I've forgotten about that.
Yeah. She has a few guns in her gun cases. She actually bought me a gun, a rifle.
That was kind of her.
Yeah, and I told her to keep it at her house. I won't have it in my house. So yes. So yeah, I don't own a gun, but she bought me one, so I don't consider that me owning one. But yeah, my mom, my siblings have guns.
Well, technically, if your mum buys you a bunch of flowers, you have a bunch of flowers. If she buys you a nice new wristwatch or a pen or a handbag, you have those. So you do have a gun.
It's in here. You have to. It's not. It's not. I don't know if it's a registration or something, but you have to get. I don't know when you buy a gun, you have to give them your license and whatnot. And I think the gun might be registered under you. Maybe that's how it works. I don't know. I've never tried to do that. I'd have to ask my mom, but legally, I don't own a gun.
No. Okay.
Yeah. So I've never.
Have you ever fired it?
Have I ever fired a gun? Yes.
Right.
Not my gun when I was younger. I've never, recently have not touched a gun. But when I was younger, my dad used to take us out shooting.
I'm not going to ask Steve because he was in the military for years. Steve, have you ever fired a gun? I hope you have.
I'll tell you what, though, never since I left the army. I had a fill of them. It's just something, once you've been involved with them, you don't.
You don't need them afterwards, some people come out of the army and say they want one. I came out of the police. I carried a firearm in the police and just never wanted to carry one after that. In fact, I used to do diplomatic protection. That means I was standing outside the embassy, or in London, it was all embassies. And I'd be standing outside the embassy with the gun in one side and my bullets in the other side. I just never bothered putting the two together. It was that blasé, that casual. We didn't bother. It was 1979, 1980, something like that. So Holly says, this is how I wish I was, actually. Holly says, I have not and would not fire a gun. I feel pretty much the same.
And that was one thing I was amazed when I got to China. I just naturally assumed that every it's authoritarian states, so they're going to be armed to the teeth.
You'll see some of them have guns at the airport. Most of them don't. I was in the airport I was stuck in Guangzhou airport for 7 hours the other day, and I had very little to do because I had no power on my computer and couldn't find a place to plug in, which is quite unusual for a Chinese airport. But I eventually did find a place. But I was actually observing this, and I hardly saw any firearms. I remember flying into London the last time I flew, and the last time I was in Australia. There's the guys have got the across the shoulder submachine guns in the airport. Even in the airport, they didn't have. But what you do notice is that there are a lot of them. There's a lot of them. You can't go into the airport without going through an explosive check. They just put a trace of something which has a chemical on it, like a litmus test. They just swipe somewhere on your body, and if you've been exposed to firearms or explosives, this will register. And so you can't even get into the airport without going through 2 or 3 police officers who are quite well trained at doing this. Then when you're in the airport, there's lots of them wandering around. You can't go in through. In fact, for a while there, you couldn't go into the airport unless you had a ticket to fly somewhere. I think that was more COVID related than anything else. But lots of police, but yeah, they're not armed. And they're friendly too.
Yeah, I don't even remember the Chinese military, because places like Chongqing, Chengdu, etc. They in the squares, they would have that little caravan or whatever it was in a square.
Yeah, everywhere. Yeah,
but they'd have their riot gear by the side, that kind of thing, the shields, whatever. But when they were marching, I don't remember seeing
for FN Hunter, this is actually correct. A lot of Chinese police do have guns. There is the People's Armed Police, and they do carry guns, and they have a purpose for having them. In general policing, you don't see it very often where you go into a police station. And I used to go into a police station regularly. Every time you leave the country and come back, you have to re-register as a resident, a temporary resident. I don't have to do that so much now because I'm long-term resident. But I used to go to the police station a lot, and you'd see one sergeant walk past and he's got a gun on his hip. That's it. But there's 10 other policemen that you notice that they don't. So it's very, very much a minority thing. And that was probably the same as when I was a police officer in the UK. Nobody who looked at me would have known I had a gun, but I had one. That's the thing. We used to hide them. We had a little gun holster pocket in the front of our trousers, and it would have been almost impossible to, no, not almost, it was impossible to do a quick draw. But certainly we had them and they were there, but you just didn't know. And I think that may be the same with China. So he says private Chinese. I don't know that there's any private people. Chinese, let's go back to the original quote. Chinese also have guns. You have to look at Douyin. Well, if they do, they're not legal. I think that's probably the best way to view that that comment. I don't know of. I mean, I don't know the law on guns. But I don't know of anyone who's got one, and I certainly don't know of any law that allows you to carry one. Certainly not like America, and the UK is pretty much the same. No one carries a gun to go shopping. Do you ever see, Christy, do you see people in the shopping center with a gun?
Actually, I do. Here in Wyoming, they carry pistols on their side. It has to, unless they have a permit to have it, hidden, a concealed permit, that they have to show that they have a gun on them. And so I've seen them holsters on the side walking around with a gun in shopping.
So because they can't carry it concealed, they have to carry it open.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure which is better.
I know it kind of freaks me out when I walk by them. Though I mean, I just for some reason it just freaks me out because they don't look like they're police officers or off duty police officers. They look like just regular people walking and shopping with a gun.
I was going to say maybe they are off duty police officers. They get changed and go shopping on their way home.
They could, but I'm thinking some of them are probably not. They have their cowboy hats on over here in Wyoming.
And here's our expert. Yawen says it's not legal as a regular citizen. So I mean, you may find some police officers on Douyin. The comment was that you'll see them if you go on. Douyin is the Chinese TikTok. That's another thing that we probably could have talked about tonight. But it's not legal. You see them on TikTok, but not legal. Maybe not even real. It is possible to buy fakes and toys, replicas. I think a replica is another thing. That's a different thing to a toy gun. A replica looks like the real thing. But I saw them for sale in Hong Kong a few years ago. I'm not sure if they're still available. but I saw replica guns and they looked very real to me. So yeah, not as a regular citizen. And someone says, Bobby, Christy, do you know what a Bobby is?
Is that a police? Are we talking about, in the UK, police officer, right? Or
I know Steve. I wasn't going to ask Steve that one. I know he would know that. A Bobby is a British, generally speaking, I think a London police officer gets called a Bobby. I know I was a Bobby on the beat. But we carried a baton. It's called a truncheon. It's about that long, about 30 centimeters, a foot long, little over a foot long. And it has a leather strap, and it's very good for hitting people. But you don't hit them on the head because it just bounces off or might even snap. If you hit them on the elbow or the collarbone here, that really disables people. Yeah. So, and this is why they're called Bobbies. The person who was the founder of what we call the modern police officer was a guy called Robert Peel, Bobby Peel. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. Anything else that we should discuss today? Do you want to go to the TikTok thing?
I would also. We were going to discuss maybe about the Dalai Lama too. Since that was
yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah. Bobby is the name of a person. Someone's just asked this question. Let's just answer this one very quickly. Bobby is not a person, is it? Yes, it's the name of a person. It's also the nickname of a British police officer, the ones that wear the little funny hats. And I could show you a picture of me in one if I knew how to work the system better. That's a long, long time ago, and I don't look like this. The Dalai Lama. I just released a video about this, which was called What on Earth Was the Dalai Lama Thinking of? Christy, what was he thinking of?
I don't know.
What do you think when you saw it?
Maybe, I don't know. I did watch your video, and you said it wasn't a cultural thing that they do, because a lot of anti-China people like Drew say, oh, it's cultural that they do that.
Okay, there was in the 9th century, so we're going back a few years now, before Drew was born. In the 9th century, there was a Dalai Lama who apparently was abnormally cruel. And from what I've heard, this is quite common. It's come through the Dalai Lamas. This one was abnormally cruel. And he had a black tongue. If he put his tongue out, it was black. And this was some kind of disease or affliction that he had. So when he was coming near to death, people would wonder who was going to replace him. And nobody wanted to have. The idea is his soul enters your body and you become the next Dalai Lama. Nobody wanted to do that or be that. And so they would put out their tongue to show, I don't have a black tongue. I'm not going to be the next Dalai Lama. That is the culture of it. And there is definitely inside of Tibet some kind of culture that accepts poking out the tongue as a greeting in groups. And it actually says it's not a public greeting. It's not something you do in the streets. It's just something that's done in groups of people who know each other. So that was it. That's in the 9th century. So the sticking out of the tongue, if he just stuck out his tongue, I think everyone would have said, that's weird. But cultures have different things. The Inuits rub noses, I'm told. So things like that. I always think these are weird, but as someone said, this is an interesting comment. It's not the first time he's done something creepy like this. Steve, what did you think when you saw it?
To me, it was revolting. I thought at first when I saw it, I saw it before your video, Jerry, I thought it was one of those deep fakes. Because I couldn't believe that somebody in that situation would be doing it.
So did I, until he released an apology.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah.
I wasn't going to make a comment about it. I was just going to let this whole thing go because of that's rubbish. That's not true. And then he made the apology, and I thought, oh my goodness.
The government the Tibetan government in exile has been, given. I think what they something like, he's totally pure, and all that kind of thing. whatever it is, the very best I can say that this was a massive error of judgment. But no, there was, the whole situation was just utterly wrong. As I say, I'm willing to benefit of the doubt, but no, that was just out and out wrong, out and out incorrect. The terrible thing to do to a young child, to put him into that kind of situation as well, regardless of culture, whatever. You could see, to my mind, from the child, he was reluctant and he was unsure. But if you're in a position where you have somebody who is like this, you know, who is this important to your culture, to your faith, and is doing this.
Yeah, he's a very powerful, I mean, emotionally powerful person. I just want to answer this question, or this comment. This is not necessarily a true story. It's a story that goes back to the 9th century, so it's probably changed. I don't know if it's a real thing. I don't know. Maybe he didn't have a tongue. I don't know the real story, but it's just, this is the research that I did. There was in the 9th century a Dalai Lama who was abnormally cruel. One of the things that the comments that I made in my video about this, when I watched this video, and I had to watch it 10 or 12 times to be sure of this, there's more to this than just the kiss and the tongue, suck my tongue thing. There's more to it. He actually had a grip like a vice on the boy's arm, holding it. And I use the words, the venerable crutch. I'm trying to be a little sarcastic and lighthearted about this, but he actually had that boy gripped. So yes, the boy looked uncomfortable, and wanted to back away, but couldn't. There was no way to back off, and that was the problem with it. And the way I view this, as I said in there, it's not a matter of sensitivity. I was going to say it's not even a matter of propriety. This is a matter of criminality. This is something that needs to be looked at by the police. Is this the first time this has happened? Is it an aberration that an old man has done something regretful and stupid? Are there other videos? Now, there are other people around there taking pictures. Let's have a look at those if they haven't already been deleted and see what was happening from the other side, because that looked to me a lot more serious than just a kiss. Now, people can defend it, but what are you defending?
Exactly.
There was, I only just saw it before we came on here, so I've to mention it. But there's a video, and it's him acting very strangely. He's with Lady Gaga. I don't know if you've seen it. And he's talking to her, and he's sort of reaching over and sort of, it's just before a press conference or a press junket starts, and he's sort of just touching the thigh and all this kind of thing, you know. And
really? I didn't see that.
Tickling, and it's just like weird.
Very weird. Yeah.
Wow.
Just like cameras aren't on, so you know.
He made some inappropriate comments in 2015, 2019, but they could be put down to humor. Just he said that the next Dalai Lama could be a woman, but she had to be beautiful, otherwise she'd be useless. That kind of thing. Now, that could be just a culturally insensitive thing to say, bad sense of humor, and inappropriate in modern Western communities, but he said it to the BBC, and then he issued an apology, and you could write that one off. You could say, okay, it was inappropriate, but he's coming from an entirely different culture where women have a different place. I accept that. Everybody has their differences, but then having done that, he did it again 2 years later. I think 2017 or 2015 and 2017, he did it twice, the same comment. And one of them was to a lady who's now an MP in the UK. She interviewed him, and Zara something. She's a really nice lady, but anti-China, unfortunately, but good MP, a hard-working MP. I think she's from up north somewhere, Steve. You might know who I'm talking about.
Doesn't ring a bell, no.
I think she has either Indian or Pakistan heritage, and she's somewhere in the Yorkshire area. Anyway,
actually, I think I saw that. I think I saw that where she was interviewing him. She blatantly asked him about what that comment was before. Is that the one? Okay,
that's the one. Yeah, that's her. I think she's an MP now. That lady,
Yeah.
Anyway, she asked him that, and he had to apologize. He issued an apology afterwards, but he's done it twice, the same joke twice, and had to apologize each time. So that's an indication of maybe some kind of cognitive issues there. He forgets.
Just my apologies, sir. I've seen some very strange pictures with Joe Biden.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I posted them.
Yeah,
it was me. I posted, because I had found those pictures.
That kind of stuff, and bit of unfortunate touching. And we've also had a few of our leaders, such as Mr. Johnson, who was also a little bit something like that. We see as men get older that power begins to get them, and when the cognitive issues tend to pile up as well, that this is something a lot of.
I think the question that's being asked for a lot of people is, what's he like behind closed doors? If he does that he was in front of a crowd and cameras, and he forgot himself, I think. That does tend to lead to perhaps some very unfortunate things. Creepy Joe. So someone says Creepy Joe was all over the internet. Was it the one? Did you post that one, Christy, just the other day, where he had his hand on the woman's breast while he was talking to her?
No, not that one, but I have seen that one. I posted with the two children. I think it looked like he was trying to kiss a boy, and then the other one he had behind the girl in front of him, and he had his hands on her head and was like going to kiss her forehead or her top of her head. And the look on her face.
I often think that some of that is just unfortunate. He's an affectionate grandpa type of person, and of course, kids. I've got grandkids. I want to kiss them sometimes, and they go, "Get off that, granddad." Get lost, and you do get that from your kids sometimes. And there's a period of time where your own children don't want to hug, or this is not the right thing to do. They just go through that phase or that age. And I sometimes think that maybe there's a little bit of, it's not as inappropriate as it looks. It's just that the camera has caught that moment. And I sometimes think that. But you can do that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 times. But it's like every week there's a new one coming out.
Yeah, I saw the one with his hand on her breast. I saw that one recently too.
Yeah, that was weird. He was having a conversation with it, and I've never seen him do that to a man.
No.
Well, I mean, he is a toucher. He does touch people quite often. Did you see him when he landed in Ireland this morning or yesterday? Steve, go on. Go with the story, Steve.
Okay. I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh yeah, well he's arriving. He's arriving on the Air Force One or whatever you call it. And it wanders down the stairs, and there's the committee to meeting at the bottom, and there's little Rishi Sunak standing right in front of him, and Biden comes up to him and moves him aside with one hand and goes on to shake the hand of this, I don't know who he is, there's some bloke in a military uniform standing behind him, big red important uniform.
He just pushed the Prime Minister aside.
He did. I gotta go. I'm going to see that one.
I don't know what it is. I don't think
just search Biden arrives in Ireland. I mean, he got down the stairs okay. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a start.
He made the stairs, but he's got to get back up again on his way home. It was the weirdest thing. He did actually shake Rishi's. I think he shook Rishi's hand. It looked like he did, but he just pushed him away.
He most probably thought he was the attendant or something. He's not a very prepossessing figure, is he, old Rishi Sunak? That's the thing.
There's an interesting comment here. I think this is it. Yeah, media is normalizing it. The first thing the BBC did is it came out and said, "But sticking tongue out is a cultural thing." Yeah, okay, but sucking your tongue, that's not a cultural thing. I mean, I said in the video, there is no society or no culture where people ask someone to suck their tongues. But then I thought about it. When you close the bedroom door, perhaps there is. But it's just it's not a normal thing. It's definitely not normal. So there was that. And they are the media, the Drew Pavlus of the world. Drew's a wonderful guy, isn't he?
Great value.
I don't know what to say about Drew any more than he's a wonderful guy. I'm sure he's very smart. I can't comment on any of these. Blocked me, so we're no longer speaking to each other. We had a tiff. Yeah, this is it. This is sickening how mainstream media is just pushing this all under the rug.
Yeah,
in my
just
opinion.
looking through the article now, and there's literally, in the case of this article, there is very little that could be seen in any way as negative. The article by, in fact, hasn't even got a name on it. Yeah, it's one of these annoying ones they put up that doesn't have a name on it, a byline.
Right.
It's just, in effect, giving excuses. Oh, he might have done this, for some reason. And then there's one little bit at the end where it says he apologized for saying that the female.
Yeah, it's appropriate that he apologized, but I also think that was that comment about the culture. Not all things in all cultures are acceptable. That's also true. But generally speaking, what is acceptable in one culture, if it's not acceptable in another culture, it's accepted as that culture does it. It's not an illegality anywhere in the world. And I would think that sucking a preteen boy's tongue anywhere in the world would have some kind of criminal consequences. That's what makes me very upset about this whole thing. He really needs somebody to come and talk to him and establish what really happened. Yeah. Anyway, we've now reached an hour and a half. Is there anything else that you guys would like to add?
Did you want to talk about TikTok or?
No, we'll put that aside for another day. We'll see if it gets banned. It's not
yeah, all I can say. Yeah, all I can say about that is that Restrict Act is really terrifying for a lot of Americans.
That's why it's not going to get banned. I mean, okay, very quickly, my opinion. Let's Steve. Is TikTok going to get banned?
No. They'll fiddle about with it, and they'll do little things like ban it in Parliament. But to my mind, social media shouldn't be on official phones of any type, Twitter, Facebook, whatever.
Fair enough, yeah.
They've got their offices to do that. No, it's not going to get banned.
Okay. Christy, is it going to get banned?
I don't think so. I don't think that we're going to allow it to get banned. And that Restrict Act is not going to happen.
Okay. First of all, the Restrict Act is never going to happen. You have too many freedoms in your country to allow that to get through.
I don't think we're going to allow that to happen.
The second thing is you've got 150 million potential voters because most TikTok users are either voters or preparing to be voters soon. Nothing is going to happen before the next election. They are not going to ban it. They are going to fool around with this, what they call the Texas Project. The Texas Project is bringing all of the data into America and store it there under American supervision. So then it becomes no different to anywhere else. If someone from China wants to see it, they have to apply through the American legal system to see whatever they have to see. No control of the data by anyone who has connection to China. That's how that's going to work. That's all going to work, but it's got to just flounder until November next year. After November next year, what you'll have is one of them will be saying, I will not ban TikTok. And that's how they're going to go through their next election. And it'll be Donald Trump. How can I ban TikTok? It's one of the most popular apps. You love TikTok. You love it. I love it. I can see Donald Trump saying it now.
Yeah,
it's not going to get banned. Yeah. And Shady has, okay, Christy, you're an American. The Patriot Act happened.
That I think because of 9/11 and the fear, that's why that happened and was passed. But this is TikTok. I think it's a different. It's not the fear like they had before. So
okay, that's why the Patriot happened.
They'll go ahead though and force the sale to some American company, and then it will become that. We just won't know about it.
Yeah, that's possibly true as well. So, Michael, sorry, no, we did not discuss Taiwan, and Macron. We did kind of touch on it, but we didn't really discuss very much about it. This is interesting from Shady. the foundations were actually laid beforehand during the Clinton era. So maybe they knew something was coming.
Yeah, that's true. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's now, by my clock, it's nearly 10 to 1. And I'm going to go and have a shower and jump into bed, and wish you guys a very good night, and also wish everybody who's watching and listening and taking part a very good night. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for everything else. 92 Wolfowitz doctrine, someone's just said. Where can we find you? Christy, you have an unusual Twitter handle, right?
Yes, Alyssa SL.
Can you spell it?
ALISAISIL.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and Steve, where can we find you?
Oh, it's just at Steve Weaver Tefl, TEFL.
Tefl, teach English as a foreign language. Yeah, you can come across here and do that. I can help you. Yeah.
No,
okay.
I will come there and learn how to speak it correctly from Chinese students.
They tend to actually, a lot of mine are better, but there's a lot of students in they tend to learn how to read, write, and answer questions on paper without actually learning how to speak English. That's every student learns English.
I've got a friend down in Guangzhou at the university down there. She runs a language department, and she's been over here, and she gets it right down there. Believe me.
She ought to with that job, and Guangzhou's when you're over here meeting her, Guangzhou's only 60 or 70 kilometers from here. So
pop up.
On that happy note, we're going to end it for tonight and get together again maybe in a few weeks' time. A little shorter gap than the last time. Okay?
That's a good idea. Yes.
All right.
Great
well,
to meet you, Christy. Have a good day.
Good to meet you.
Thank you, everyone, and good night. I'll end the broadcast now. Gosh, that takes time to end. Wow, it does not want to end.
Well, you should talk some more till it ends.
Yeah, maybe we should, but it's probably
We
going to go.
We lost Steve, though.
Yes, Steve had enough. I don't blame him. He looks after his elderly mother-in-law.
Yeah, I've seen him post about her. Yes.
Yeah. So there's what it is. It keeps giving me a message. There's some trouble with your internet, and probably what will happen is it'll just go any second now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as Yin Ho Kuo says, awkward.
Says, hey, we can keep on talking. How about the weather I'm having over here?
Yeah, how about the weather?
It snowed.
You said it's snowing there.
Actually, looking outside, and it's still snowing. You can't see out the window of my house, but yeah, it's still snowing.
Are you planning to go out anywhere?
Yeah, I need to go to the store today
okay.
Get some food. But
yeah, wear something warm.
Yeah, okay. Definitely have to wear my jacket.
What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to actually cut the StreamYard tab and say good night.
All right.
They've got a cyclone. Hazard must be in West Australia. Okay. Good night, everyone, and I'll talk to you again soon.
All right. We'll see you.
See you.